We don't think twice about speaking up for our friends or especially our children, but when it comes to advocating for ourselves, most women, we need a little practice. Author Vikki Carrel is joining me. I love this topic, advocating for yourself, because I think there is a fine balance to strike. Why do you think, first of all, why do you think women struggle with this?
Because it's risky. Anytime you speak out, you're putting yourself on the line, and you're worried about being, accepted, understood, validated. You don't want to be embarrassed, so it comes across as risky, and you certainly don't want to get involved in a conversation that has conflict.
Most women avoid that. Most people, I would say.
Absolutely.
Avoid that. Do you think women really understand the definition of self-advocacy? How would you define it?
Well, I define it that, first of all, you have to recognize your strengths and your needs, and then effectively communicate them to others. But the key is the effective communication.
Is this something we can improve upon, we can get better at?
There are skills that you can learn and implement. It's like anything. The more you practice, the better you become. But the more effective you communicate, that increases your chances of getting what you need and want.
So the first skill that you identify in building that ability to self-advocate in an appropriate way is to identify and define the request. So I'm thinking of a mom who all day long is delegating in her household. She's asking kids to pick up their clothes. She's asking the family to help her with this. Aren't moms pretty good at this?
You would think so, but it's being understood. We live in environments that have lots of distractions. So if you're advocating and your children are watching TV, have their cell phones, texting, you might as well be talking to a wall. So you want to make sure you have a distraction-free environment so that they are listening. That's the key. And then you want to make sure that it's quick, simple. Don't give them 12 chores, 2 or 3, and then ask them if they understand and have them give you feedback. You'll know right away if they've been listening to you.
So if your kids aren't responding, the fault could be on mom's shoulders for picking the wrong time.
Distractions.
Distractions.
We live in a world of distractions.
I really like that. Okay, speaking up at home, someone might say, I can do that. I feel comfortable. This is my setting. It's my family. I feel comfortable speaking up at home. What about speaking up in a more formal situation? That can be scary.
It can be. And the thing that you need to make sure in a formal situation is you don't control the environment, but you can definitely educate yourself and build expertise. Say you're going in to talk to the principal about your child's academic performance. I can speak personally to this because I have a child that has ADHD and a learning disability. So I spent a lot of time advocating. I networked with other parents. I learned from their experience, appreciated their support. Then I also got online, learned about ADHD, what my rights were. I went on the website for the school and the district to find out what is available. So when I talk to the principal and maybe only have 20 minutes, I'm not spending time educating, I'm getting to the point. 2 or 3 requests and some simple solutions, so when I leave the meeting, I feel like we really have a concrete plan as to how to help my child thrive, who's now in college and doing well. So the advocacy worked for me.
That's good to hear. That's so good to hear. I know moms struggle with that situation.
You can. It can be frightening.
So you do your homework and you utilize the time you have with that administrator, that principal, that teacher.
Because time is, is precious.
Is valuable. When I think of women or individuals advocating for themselves, every example I can come up with in my mind is a woman who's passionate about something. She's obviously passionate enough to speak up and defend herself or advocate for herself. How do you keep that passion from tipping the conversation or the situation in the wrong direction?
I'm glad you bring that up. It's important because when we advocate, especially for our children, we're very passionate. But we need to be sure that we advocate before we reach emotional overload, where we're exhausted, we're frustrated, because when you go into a meeting with an individual and you have those kinds of feelings, you're never going to walk out with a positive result. So advocate before you're on emotional overload, but passion is great.
Do you think it's always best to advocate for yourself, or are there situations or scenarios where it might be better to let someone else speak up for you?
Definitely. An example of this, it's called creating a bridge. Let's say you go in to have your teeth cleaned, and the dental hygienist is dressed inappropriately, unprofessionally. If you speak up to her, that could cause conflict, right? A better way is to find a mentor, find out who her supervisor is, and then create that bridge. Explain your concern, and then that person is the voice. They know her, They can speak probably easy to her. They know if there's a dress code enforced, and then they can always come back to reinforce and make sure that there's been correction there. So definitely creating a bridge can help avoid conflict, and sometimes it's just more effective. Just more effective.
You mentioned early on in this conversation, I appreciate this point so much, that we avoid it because we want to avoid conflict. And I struggle with the idea that women or individuals would choose to say nothing or do nothing over avoiding conflict. Do you find that's the case, though?
Well, you have to remember that confrontation is oftentimes associated with negative. There can be confrontation and it can be positive. You just need to know how to define and set boundaries. And also when you're speaking with a person that you see as more educated, say a doctor, you go in to discuss a health concern, and they really want you to start on a certain medication or have a certain procedure. It's okay to set boundaries and to say, my voice is important, my opinion counts, I'm not ready to make a decision, I need to think about this, educate myself, put this on hold, and I'll get back to you. So confrontation doesn't always need to be a negative.
It can be positive.
It can. It's just how you handle it and how you define and set boundaries.
You've got to value yourself, and I like the tips that you provided on your online article as well about body language and how that contributes to the communication and the message you're putting out.
Absolutely, especially when we communicate with someone that knows us well, like a spouse, because we almost become transparent. They know us really well. So open body language. If you fold your arms and you keep your eyes down or turn your back, you're starting off on a negative foot. So open body language, positive comments. Don't set off emotional triggers that could bring conflict as well. So it's very important in those situations to value yourself. Remember that attitude is key, and you can be positive and still firm.
Great advice, Vikki. So nice to meet you. Where can we get more of your advice?
My website, Vikki Carrel, VIKKICARRLED.com.
Okay, we'll link you there from our website, studio5.ksl.com. Thank you. Darren will send it over your direction.
Thanks, Brooke.